Scholars and students of the biblical scriptures have long puzzled and debated over the identity of the star that led the wise men from the east to Jerusalem as described in Matthew chapter 2. In the Gospel according to Matthew, in chapter 2, we read, "Now when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem, saying, Where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east, and are come to worship him." This passage actually presents a bit of a geographical problem, because verse 1 specifically says that there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem, but verse 2 says that the wise men inquire, saying, "For we have seen his star in the east." The problem with this passage is, if they came from the east to Jerusalem, but they were following a star that they saw in the east, they would actually have had to go all the way around the globe to end up in the west if they were traveling on the surface of the earth. If they came from the east to Jerusalem, but they followed a star that they saw in the east, that would not take them towards Jerusalem if they were traveling on the surface of the planet. And this isn't a problem that relates specifically to this part of the globe. This would be a problem anywhere. If you start in the east, but you follow a star in the east, you're not going to end up in the west unless you make a full circle. So, who were these wise men? Is there a way to resolve this dilemma? Yes, there is, because these verses work perfectly well if we are talking about a drama that takes place in the heavens. The three stars that make up Orion's belt are among the most recognizable in the sky, and it just so happens that when they are sinking down in the west, after traveling all the way across the sky from the east, traveling from east to west like every other star, when they're sinking down in the west, the constellation Virgo the Virgin is rising up in the east. And so, having come from the east, the three belt stars of Orion's belt, the three kings, can look back across the sky to the east and see, rising in the east, the constellation Virgo, the Virgin, and her outstretched arm is carrying his star, the star of the divine child. The celestial interpretation perfectly reconciles these two verses. The stars came from the east, the three belt stars, and they look back and they see his star rising in the east. This statue from ancient Egypt shows the goddess Isis holding the divine child Horus on her lap, and her extended arm is very distinctive of the constellation Virgo. So notice how that extended arm, where there's a star in the constellation Virgo, would correspond perfectly to his star. That's the star that the wise men see in the east. That's his star. That's the star of the child of the Virgin. Now there's another very strong celestial correspondence in this story, and that comes from the fact that when the constellation Virgo the Virgin is rising up in the east, on the eastern horizon, and the three belt stars of Orion are sinking down in the west, the constellation of the zodiac that is at its highest point in the zodiac band, at its zenith, is the constellation Cancer the Crab. Ahead of Virgo is Leo the Lion, and ahead of Leo the Lion in the zodiac band is Cancer the Crab, and Cancer contains a distinctive star cluster known as the Beehive Cluster, and it also had the ancient name of Chrysope, which means the manger. It's right between two stars known as Ocellus borealis and Ocellus australis, the northern and southern donkey colts, and it's known as the manger. It's the beehive cluster is its most common name. So this is a very compelling series of celestial correspondences to this story. And in fact, there's one more. There's actually many more, but one more significant one that we can point out here in verses 11 and 12 when the Magi, it says, "And when they were come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary his mother, and fell down and worshipped him." Okay, the stars are going down in the west. They're falling down and worshiping him. And then in verse 12 we read, "And being warned of God in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they departed into their own country another way." So after they fell down to the western horizon, they departed back to their own country. We are told that they came from the east another way. They go back to the east a different route. They go underground, so to speak. This is a very clear series of clues, and you find this type of series of clues in many biblical texts, many scriptural texts actually around the world, where these clues have been put there to show that they are celestial allegories. They are star myths. Now, the question might well be asked, why would the ancients around the world encode their sacred scriptures with celestial allegories? Alvin Boyd Kuhn once wrote, "Using solar symbolism and analogues in depicting the divine soul's peregrinations round the cycles of existence, the little sun of radiant spirit in man, being the perfect parallel of the sun in the heavens and exactly copying its movements, the ancient sages marked the four cardinal turns of its progress round the zodiacal year as epical stages in soul evolution." In other words, what I believe he's saying there is that these messages from the ancients tie us to the universe. We have inside of us a reflection of what's going on in the infinite heavens, and the infinite heavens depict profound truths about our human condition, about the cycle of coming down into these bodies, these physical bodies, where we are material, but we still have a spiritual component, an invisible divine spark that in this passage Alvin Boyd Kuhn refers to as the little sun that's inside each man and woman. He says man, and it's quite clear from his writings, and he specifically says it at other points. He's talking about every single man and woman. This unites all of us. These stories are not about one particular person or one subset of humanity. The fact that they're about the stars shows the stars are representative of the spiritual world, the invisible world, and this is relating to every single human being on earth. We all have a spiritual component, and the four positions on the zodiac wheel, the 4 points of the year, including the summer solstice, the fall equinox, the winter solstice, and the spring equinox, each have something to tell us about the progress of the human soul, the experience of the human soul. That's what he's talking about. And so the winter equinox and the Christmas story has something to do with the birth of the divine aspect of the human soul, the awakening of the consciousness of the Christ consciousness or the divine consciousness, the awakening that you're something more than just material. after being plunged down into this physical body. At first, we don't even remember where we came from, and we keep going down, down, down to the very bottom of the year. And then at that turn, that's when something new is born. And so these stories are about the progress of every single human soul. Now, we've seen from this video that it's very hard to argue that this passage describes events on earth. The specific details of the visit of the Magi really only work for a celestial interpretation, and that's not actually an exception within the stories in the Bible. That's actually a pattern that you can show over and over from one story to another. And in fact, it's not only is it in the New Testament, it's in the Old Testament, but not only that, it is around the world, in the myths of ancient Egypt, of ancient Greece, of the Norse, of the uh, Native Americans of North America, Central America, South America, the people of the Pacific Islands, their sacred stories, of China, of Japan, of Australia, of Africa. This is found around the world. And I believe that these stories have a very profound message, and that they are, in fact, the common inheritance of all humanity. They're all teaching us very much the same thing. They really unite us, and they are a wonderful treasure for us to learn from this ancient wisdom.